everybody. My name is Alan. On behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. You know, I guess most of you who've seen the show before, and I guess a lot of you haven't, those of you who haven't, I mean, we tape a live show every 2 weeks. We probably do about 22 to 25 a year. And since the last show, I mean, the thing that's really struck me, I mean, the show is done in Santa Barbara, California, and there's been extreme weather for this area now, probably not extreme weather in a sense for the East Coast with tornadoes and snows and all that. But for us, we had this tremendous rain over the last 2 or 3 days, and boats were just taken out of the water and thrown onto the land, and where there used to be beach now is just mud, and where there used to be restaurants, there's water going all the way through them. And then the other thing that happened in this 2-week period since the last show is that a guest who was supposed to appear, a friend and a guest of Bridging Heaven and Earth, he was going to appear in a show in a couple of months, had the skiing accident and now finds himself in a coma. And he's been in it for about 10 days. And what does it mean? I mean, all these things happening. And what does it show us is the fragility of this human life. I mean, if boats can be thrown around, if lives can be put into comas at any moment, any of our lives. I mean, everyone watching the show, probably in tomorrow's paper in their local area, there'll be somebody in the obituaries who's younger than them. So for all of us, not to use death as a thing of fear, but to use death as, or those kind of calamities, those kind of things that show the fragility of our human lives. To take that as, how can we live the life we have now while we are alive, while we're not in a coma, while we're not being thrown in a certain way, to really experience the most we can in this life, the true love of this life. How many of us are really living our passions and living our love? And for all of us, we can do more of it. I mean, I was talking to a friend today, and which of us couldn't have more faith? Which of us couldn't have more love? Which of us couldn't experience more love and share more love? And the answer would probably be no one. No one who's in a physical body. No one who is walking this earth. And so for all of us, we're all in this together. We're all in that experience that we need to experience more. And whatever, we say this almost every show somewhere along the line, whatever we see as the divisions, whatever we see as the separations, there's a place that we can experience where the one is real, where the one is true, where love is the question and love is the answer. And that's really what we want. And tonight, again, we have a guest whose life is dedicated for himself and to all those he comes in contact with to bring people into that experience of the love, of the truth, of what people call God. We have with us Quay Wright, who's an integral regression therapist. And truthfully, what he really is, whatever name you put on it, he's a healer. A healer who brings love into people's lives. And he has different means and different formats for doing that. But what he really aims to do, and what his life is dedicated, is to have that experience of love, to get rid of all the things that block us. Using hypnosis, using whatever means possible, to allow people to have that experience of the love. And for us, he's just been such a help for the show itself, and especially for the Bridging Heaven and Earth Foundation that we've talked about before. He's on the board of advisors, and he was really instrumental in helping us get started and helping us do our brochures and getting the 501c3 and all that. And we also, Peter has done a past life regression session that we videotaped. We taped a whole session of it, ran over an hour. And we've taken about 12 minutes of that past life regression session, and we have it available for you tonight. So we're really honored to have Peter with us, and I think you'll really love the video. So please join me as we normally do in a short meditation, and then we're going to have the video, and Peter's going to be with us. So it's an opportunity for that love to grow for all of us. So please join me. Thank you very much. So we're going to start tonight's show with the video I just talked about, the past life regression video. It was shot by the crew of the show, and it was with Quay, Wright, doing it with another friend of the show, Joe Klessler, and that was the session we did a while ago. We're going to show about the first 10 minutes of it. So just watch it, and then we'll discuss it with Peter, and you'll get a feel for Peter's work and his play and his dedication and his love. So.
Pain. Just simply close your eyes and go into that pain. And as we do this, what we're going to be doing is asking your unconscious mind to take us back to the very situation that we need to explore in order to release this pain and to let it go. So just allow yourself now just to go back into this memory of when you felt the pain, perhaps at its greatest, and tell me where you are, what you're aware of. Are you inside? Are you outside? What's going on for you?
I'm sitting in an airplane.
Sitting in an airplane. Okay, this is you, present day you.
Present
okay.
me.
Sitting in an airplane and?
Feeling I can't move.
Feeling I can't move. Okay.
I believe we're waiting on the tarmac a while, and it was a long flight, so I couldn't get out of the seat for a while.
Okay, couldn't get out of the seat for a while. And so this is, how long ago was this that you're aware of?
This is about 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Okay, 5 or 6 weeks ago. Okay, so that was when, were you first aware of the pain at that point, or was this just simply about that same time where it began and you were just simply very much aware of it?
It was about that time. I was aware of the pain before, but that's when it really got my attention. It really was intense pain at that time.
So go into that memory now. Go in to see yourself there sitting, being aware that you can't move, feeling you can't move. And as you're experiencing the pain, what are you feeling in your body? Just as you experience that memory.
Tension.
Tension, okay. Where do you feel the tension?
In my shoulders.
Shoulders. And anywhere else?
In the back of my neck.
Back of the neck, okay. And as you are experiencing this tension in the shoulders and the back of the neck, what are the thoughts that are going through your mind about this? Anything in particular?
I don't like being here.
I don't like being here, right? And?
And not being able to move freely.
And not being able to move. All right, what any others? Or if you were to summarize that and just simply, I don't like being here, I'm not able to move, how would you shorten that? What would it have the most juice, if you will, here? There's the most emotion to it. In fact, say the phrase, I don't like being here.
I don't like being here.
And again.
I don't like being here.
And again.
I don't like being here.
And say it with increasing feeling and attention. See where it takes you.
I don't like being here.
And again.
I don't like being here.
And what are you feeling in your body as you say that?
My heart's pounding faster.
Heart's pounding faster.
Yeah.
And what else? Allow the heart to pound faster. Just go into the moment of not wanting to be here. The heart's pounding faster. You have tension in your shoulders and the back of your neck. What else are you aware of?
My throat's tightening.
Throat's tightening. Yep. Keep on going. And say it again. I don't like being here.
I don't like being here.
And again.
I don't like being here. I don't like being here.
And what else are you aware of? Stay in the moment. Scan your body.
I can't breathe very well.
I can't breathe very well. Yeah, say that again.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe very well. I can't breathe very well.
Now what we're going to do is allow all of this to take us back to the very first time you felt this way. Just follow the energy on back and go deeply into the memory. Just allow the story to unfold as if it's important. So just say the phrase, I don't like being here. Say it 5 times and see where it takes you. Just follow it.
I don't like being here. I don't like being here.
And feel it even more and more.
I don't like being here.
And again.
I don't like being here.
And again.
I don't like being here.
And follow the energy on back. Plant yourself firmly down in the memory of your body as it was then. and plant your feet firmly into that body and look down and clearly sense or feel your feet. Are you wearing anything on your feet? If you are, what are you wearing? First thought that comes.
Nothing.
Nothing. All right. Feel your hands, large or small?
Large.
Large. Feel your hair, long or short?
Long.
Yes. So sense and feel yourself with large hands, nothing on your feet, long hair in that body of that person. Just become part of that body of that person. And as you do, are you inside or outside? First thought that comes.
Outside.
Outside. Daytime or nighttime?
Daytime.
Alone or with people?
With people.
Yes, so sense and feel yourself. Become a part of this person there, outside, daytime, with people. What are you aware of as you become more aware of what's going on around you?
I feel cold.
I feel cold, and?
I don't understand.
I don't understand.
What's going on.
I don't understand what's going on. Say that again.
I don't understand what's going on.
And again?
I don't understand what's going on.
Yes, and as you are experiencing that, not understanding what's going on, what are you aware of? What's happening around you? What seems to be happening?
People are looking at me and talking.
Yes.
There's murmuring.
Yes, exactly. People are looking at you, talking. There's murmuring here. Yes, and what else are you aware of?
A dog barking.
A dog barking, yep, yep. And what is your position? How are you? Are you standing? Are you sitting? Are you held on in some way? What's happening? As these people are talking and murmuring.
I'm upright, but my feet aren't on the ground exactly.
Yes.
Like I'm being held up.
Like you're being held up?
Held up by, yes.
Feel that. Feel yourself being upright, held up somehow, and become, as you go into that sense, that feeling of what that feels like, what else are you aware of about what's holding you up? Is it people? Is it something that's some sort of chair or something? What is it? What do you sense? What do you feel? What do you see? First thought
I'm
that
being
comes.
held by people.
Yes, being held by people. Feel that. Feel yourself being held by people. How are they holding you? By the arms, by the legs, by
my arms at the shoulders.
At the shoulders. So is it something just right like here? Are they holding it here?
Underneath my shoulder, yeah.
Up like that, okay. And the same with the other shoulder?
Underneath.
Okay, and so what's happening as they do this? What are they doing? Just stay with it, stay with it.
They're holding me in place.
They're holding you in place, yep. So sense and feel and imagine yourself. They're holding you in place. And as they're holding you in place, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? What are you seeing? What are you aware of?
I'm so afraid.
I'm so afraid, yes. And say that.
I'm so afraid.
And again.
I'm so afraid.
And again.
I'm so afraid.
Finish the whole phrase. I'm so afraid because?
I'm so afraid of what's going to happen. I'm so afraid of what they're going to do. I'm so afraid of
Stay with
what
it.
I've done.
Yes, I'm so afraid of what I've done. Say it again.
I'm so afraid of what I've done.
Yes, exactly. Now, just stay with it and let's see what happens next. Just allow to see what happens next. At the count of 3, just move forward until something happens at 1, 2, 3. What's happening?
I'm choking.
Choking, yes, choking. I'm going to place my hands around you to simulate the choking. They're not going to be that close to you, but just sense and feel. Just imagine them choking you, yes, and keep on going. Go all the way through it to the end. What's happening next?
I can't see, it's black.
I just can't see, it's black. And then keep on going all the way to the very end.
I can't breathe.
I can't breathe, and keep on going, keep on going.
I can't scream.
I can't scream because?
Something's covering my mouth.
Something's covering my mouth, yes, and keep on going. And go all the way to the very end.
They're holding me more and more.
Yes.
I think they're putting me down, placing me down on the ground.
Yes. Placing you down on the ground, and?
And covering me.
Yes, covering you. And keep on going all the way to the very end. Let it go. Let it go. Keep breathing. Keep breathing.
Me.
They're kicking you. Yes, and keep on going. Keep on going.
Stepping on my chest.
Stepping on your chest. Yes. Stepping on your chest. Yes. And what? What else are they doing? Just to simulate this. Choking you. Yes. And keep going all the way to the end.
And smothering me.
And smothering you.
I think they're putting dirt on me.
Yes. Count of 3, you'll be all the way to the very end. 1, 2, 3. What's your dying thought? What's your dying thought? Skip to the very end.
I don't understand.
I don't understand. I don't understand. Yes.
Wow. It's a powerful tape. Well, welcome, Peter. We're on the set with Peter. Welcome.
Thank you.
So why don't you describe a little bit about the process that you were doing with Joe during that video that people were just watching?
Okay. What we were doing here is, it's Integral Regression Therapy. We're focusing on the soul's unfinished business. So as I was leading her into the experience, the purpose was to help her get rid of a pain that was in her shoulder and neck, and that had come on about 6 or so weeks ago when she was sitting in an airplane at LaGuardia. So I invited her to just sense or feel herself in that experience, what was happening as she was first realizing she had the pain, then to follow it into a story, allowing the unconscious mind to take us back to the cause of it, and just simply allowing the story to unfold as if it's important. It doesn't have to be true, but as if it's important.
Now, some people, would you say there's hypnosis involved? Is it hypnosis, or does it have to be defined, or how would you describe that?
It's a good question. The approach that I use, which was pioneered by Dr. Roger Woolger, is one where we don't use hypnosis per se, because we find that when you go into the emotions, when you go into the trauma, you're already in trance. And so instead it's more of a reverie, sort of a light trance that requires no induction whatsoever.
Because, I mean, I was here when you were doing that. I mean, I was doing some different things in the control room, and it seemed like she went into what we would call a trance, or into a different state very quickly.
Right.
I mean, it was surprising. I mean, is that a standard procedure that people go under or go into that experience so quickly?
Absolutely, but she hears the traffic outside, you hear the cameras moving around, so you're not in a deep trance by any means. You're just simply focused on whatever the issue might be and on the feelings that are coming up.
And so what happens is that you go through this process and you go into what people have called past lives, or and it can go into this life or any life in the past. Is that?
That's correct. So we just encourage the unconscious mind to take the client
to go with it
and follow the energy as if it's important, and see where it takes you.
You said that twice. So, I mean, what is the distinction you're making? As if it's important. So you're saying that basically the story itself isn't important?
The story is a means to help release whatever the blockage might be. What we find is that the soul speaks through the imagination. So we're asking the unconscious mind to simply take the client on a journey into a story, and we see where the defeats occurred to the client or the person in that story, in that, quote, past life. So we find out those defeats, and out of the defeats come the complexes, or the issues, or the trauma, or the fears. It's the same in this life. So then we find out not only what happened in the life, but how did the person die? What was the dying thought? Because
and that's what the end of that video was, and she was being crushed or something.
Covered with dirt.
Covered with
something.
dirt.
Something was happening to her. Because the Buddhists believe that our dying thought has a major impact on an upcoming lifetime. So if you die thinking, I wasn't strong enough, or it's not safe for me to speak my truth, or something major that's a core belief.
That you carry that forward, and the next life you have that as part of your programming to start out with.
Exactly, an issue that you're most likely going to have to face.
So you believe in reincarnation. How do you see reincarnation? I mean, with all your experience this way, do you have a particular philosophy about reincarnation?
I have my own philosophy, which is that for me, I do believe in reincarnation, but I find that if the client does not, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We just simply see it as a story.
So do clients who normally don't believe in reincarnation, after they go through the process, start to believe in it more because they're talking about certain things in specific ways that they know didn't happen in this lifetime?
It depends on the client. I just encourage them to follow their own beliefs, whatever they may be, and if they prefer to think of it as reincarnation, fine, and if not, find, because it could be that the unconscious mind is making up the whole thing.
And so this is in the Buddhist philosophy that we keep reincarnating until we get it right, or we know that oneness or that truth, or is that your experience also?
Exactly. We're brought to the earth, or we come back to the earth time and time again, for the soul to have a variety of experiences as men, women, as children, as different races, having lots of different, shall we say, life experiences to help the soul evolve and eventually return to source.
And why do you think that the experiment was set up in such a way that we don't seem to remember all these differences? So we say, I'm a male now. You know, instead of taking it as a small part of the infinite, we take this life. I mean, is that just the way the experiment was set up, do you think?
Well, I think it was something that we decide before we are born into this particular body what our major lessons will be, what our challenges will be. And once we're in body, we have amnesia, if you will, as to previous lifetimes, because it gives us an opportunity to truly experience.
To focus on that particular one.
Right, rather than having past life memories surface from numerous lives that might get in the way of really living in the now.
Certainly we could be more expansive. I mean, once you start to experience yourself as male, female, young, old, black, white, I mean, your way of separating out starts breaking down.
Right, exactly. And yet we find that 90% of the people who explore past lives are able to experience a story or a past life. So it's not difficult.
And it changes their life in that way, even almost more so than dealing with that specific ailment or specific malady they came to you with.
Well, often I focus in particular on what the issue might be. And if this is a means for them to help release, in Joe's case it was the pain in the shoulder and the neck, which was released by the end of the session, then the job was done. And how we got there is interesting, helpful, but what really counts is the issue was resolved.
So do people come to you? I mean, I know this, like Joe was healed in essence in one session, one hour session, because we taped it. But I mean, is that a standard thing, or do, you know, like Woody Allen goes 3 times a week for 400 years, you know, you'd be, you know, how can you have a practice with once and you heal everybody? It's like, holy Christ. I mean, of course there are so many sick people.
It's seen as short-term intensive therapy, and that we find that with most issues we can help the client release major trauma in a relatively short period of time. In fact, there was a study done last year or the year before in Holland where they took patients who were randomly selected for past life therapy and then regular therapy, if you will, traditional therapy.
You mean on the couch therapy,
yes,
Freudian type
or
therapy.
maybe talk therapy, just simply whatever that might mean. And what they found was that those who participated in the past life therapy healed twice as fast. And I find that with my clients, those who have been in traditional therapy may seek me out, and we do a great deal of work, a great deal of healing in a very short period of time.
Now, when you say healing, you're talking more than physical healing, more than like Joe's shoulder. You're talking about
emotional trauma, phobias, issues about abandonment, depression. It runs the gamut. With almost every issue has a traumatic aspect to it, and we simply go into the story and allow the story to unfold. So
would you say that the therapy that you use, the integral regression therapy, is more specific? And in other words, like, is it to like part of a spiritual path in essence to expand the human being and get rid of the blockages? Or is it more specific to deal with a specific thing that the person is conscious of at the time? It's a little bit of both. Because what we find is that often a client will have several issues that are on the surface they're looking to focus on and help relieve, and they're related. The stories are, it's all sort of coming together in one particular story. Not always, but sometimes. And it's part of the helping the client let go of the karma, let go of the trauma, let go of the, being the lessons, the balancing that needs to take place in this life, to help
relieve what's happened in the past. So the major issues the person is, or minor issues the person is dealing with.
So do people, I mean, if people are using this as almost like an opening process into the spiritual path, would they come, you know, like every week or 3 times a week or every week for a year? Or, I mean, you know, to really go deeper and deeper and deeper into that and be eliminating the karmic debt, or however you would describe it?
By going into the story and seeing where the defeats are, that allows the person to come to closure, because not only do we go through the life, we go through then the death, and as I mentioned, determine what the dying thought is, we then go into the spirit world. And this is very important, because in the spirit world, you're given the opportunity to face those who defeated you in that lifetime, where those complexes, if you will, occurred. So if you were...
Where we viewed it as defeat.
Exactly, exactly. And so if you were, let's say, shot in the back by a Confederate soldier from your own division, if you were a Confederate officer, let's say, shot in the back during the war...
Was it friendly fire, or did they mean it?
Perhaps so.
It's hard to say.
You're given the chance in the bardo, in the in-between place, in the spirit world, to face the person who killed you and to tell that person everything that you couldn't say to them at the time.
You're not a good shot.
You're right, exactly.
This is very
exactly.
bad. This was not good. This was not good.
And to have
I'm never going to walk in front of you again. This I'm learning.
But then you have a chance to hear their version of it, or often their opportunity to say they're sorry. And forgiveness can occur.
Do people ever take on both roles in the process, or are they saying, he is saying or she is saying this to me?
It's Gestalt-like, which means that you are imagining, perhaps, or you're in conversation with that person.
But you're not going both sides of it, generally. You've never seen that.
I am encouraging the client to tell me what that other person has just said to them.
But you want that other person to be in their reality.
I want them to be...
Not in switching realities. Like
right. So if you are a woman in the past life who's been raped by highwaymen, see the men who raped you. What do you want to say to them? Or what do you want to... and then we could, in fact, recreate the rape in a safe manner where the woman would have a chance to kick pillows and get rid of the charge that is in her legs or whatever, her hands, her arms, because that's what we're carrying with us. This particular approach, this integral regression therapy, is able to release trauma in the mind, body, emotions, and spirit simultaneously, because we work with what we call the subtle bodies in each of those areas in an effort to completely clear the trauma in all aspects of that person's this defeat, if you will.
Now, you used the word a couple of times, defeat. Now, is there anything that we gain from victory?
Absolutely.
So do we ever get into our victory, or do we just have to go through our defeats over and over again? Holy crap.
We can go into our victories, because if, for example, you are a writer who is suffering from writer's block, let's go back to a lifetime when you were successful as a writer or were creative, and let's help you re-experience that creativity in a way that you can bring it forward and attach it to your being today.
So it just depends whether you use victory or defeats in terms of what your particular problem or malady or situation is.
And if you're the perpetrator, see those villagers you killed. What do they say to you? And listen and let me know what they've just said to you. And often they're angry, or often they are they're understanding of this. What do you say to them in return? Again, coming to closure, helping to finish that story so it doesn't have to affect you.
Would you say most of it is either forgiving or being forgiven?
That's at the very heart.
That's at the very heart.
Love,
because love or be loved.
Yes, and forgiveness are key to complete healing.
Right. Because somewhere along the line you have to forgive yourself for just being human and all the stupid things we do, breath after breath after breath, in some way or another.
And that's
out of our unconsciousness. We hurt people, we hurt ourselves, and we're incapable of better until we're capable of better.
And often we're carrying the guilt that we need to forgive ourselves. So that may be the next step of looking into your own eyes now, now that you've forgiven those who hurt you, to forgive yourself. Can you do that?
Right. And that's part of the process.
Exactly.
And you find that for someone to really relieve their suffering in that one particular instant, then somewhere along the line, forgiveness has to take place.
Yes, indeed.
And it has to come to the root, which is yourself, to realize the human condition.
Right.
Because the human condition is that we hurt each other sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to recognize.
Right. It needs to be heartfelt, to be truly your own desire to forgive that person and to forgive yourself.
And, you know, I've talked about this before, and I would just be curious about your experience. How would you define compassion in this way, true compassion? What would a human being have to experience?
I think through the many lifetimes we develop compassion to see others as ourselves, that we're all one, as I know you've said many times. We are truly all one. So it's an effort to be aware of that and to forgive and to understand.
And recognize the nature of the human condition, that when we take physical bodies the way the experiment has come down,
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, we make mistakes and we're
Yep.
unconscious, and we're in the process of gaining consciousness and gaining love.
It's part of our
It's
soul's
part
growth.
part of it. And,
Yes.
and in that we're going to hurt people and hurt ourselves, and it's really nothing to forgive or be forgiven for, because it's just part of the game. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But that you have to really have experienced something, you know, looking down at the maze in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this allows, your process allows people to do, is look at themselves in the maze.
Exactly. And then we go to a place of overview and get a better understanding of what those lessons learned from that lifetime or not learned, and how it's affecting you today.
Right. Do you want to talk a little bit about the second clip, you know, that 2-minute thing near the end, or would you want them to see it and then we could talk about it?
Let's show it to them.
Okay, well, we're going to do the second video now, and this is a 2-minute, this is basically the ending of the session that we saw the 10-minute, more or less the beginning of before. So watch this and see how it resolved itself, and then Peter and I will talk about it when we get back. So
let's now move to the place of overview. Sense and feel yourself moving up even higher into a place of overview, where we can get a better understanding of the impact of those experiences we explored today on Jo and her present lifetime. Are you up there in the light?
Yes.
Perhaps being joined by a guide or your higher self, whatever that might be. And what are the lessons? What is the greater learning from that lifetime, those experiences that are affecting Jo today? What do you sense? What do you feel? What do you see?
It's a movie.
It's a movie, yes, and?
I'm free to make choices.
You're free to make choices. Say that again.
I am free to make choices.
And again.
I am free to make choices.
How does that feel as you say that? Yes, let it go, let it go. How does it feel?
A relief.
A relief, yeah. Say it again.
I'm free to make choices.
Say it loud and clear.
I am free to make choices.
Feel that. Say it even louder.
I am free to make choices.
And how
I
does-
am free to make choices.
How does your neck feel as you say those words?
Strong.
How does your shoulder feel as you say those words?
Strong.
How does the rest of your body feel as you say those words?
Strong.
All right, then sense and feel yourself in that strength that you are free to make choices. And so it is.
hi, we're back on the set with Peter. Yeah, that was very powerful, wasn't it? Yes. That one tear every time I watched that, really. So why don't you talk a little bit about like the process she went through in specifics, you know, how, you know, in light of what we were talking about earlier.
Well, we went through several lifetimes in this particular regression, and an effort to find out the kernel of the story as it was unfolding. And it ended up with her realization that she was free to make choices. And often it can be so emotional to truly get that, to understand that.
That we're not bound by the conventions of the time and the society and all the stuff we do.
Exactly, exactly. And so I think the tear at the very end was helped for me to underscore that fact for Jo, that she is free to make choices, and it's
tremendously liberating.
Exactly, exactly.
Well, how did you get into this? I mean, did you go to like regular schooling and become, I mean, How is the process for a person to get into, integral regression therapy, which I'll probably be able to learn how to say, like I don't have marbles in my mouth at some point.
I've always been interested in hypnotherapy, and so about 15 years ago began exploring, taking courses and classes, and then went out and got certified in alchemical hypnotherapy, and then discovered that the Association for Past Life Research and Therapies, which is the professional society for past life regression therapists, was meeting, an annual meeting in Washington, D.C., where I was living, and it was 2 blocks from where I lived. So I attended the convention and realized, these are my people. This is
really,
my
you
tribe.
felt immediately that this is
me.
This is your destiny, kind of
Exactly.
in this life, to fulfill that and help in that way.
So I took one certification program and then more recently a second one offered by Roger Wolger, and it's a combination of Freud, the best of Freud, Jung, psychodrama, Tibetan Buddhism in terms of the spiritual element as well as other spiritual activities, transpersonal psychology and shamanism among other areas. So it's a nice synthesis,
You didn't
a
leave
strong
anything out.
foundation. So, and then through that, simply working with clients and having an opportunity to...
And so this is like a license thing? I mean, is it licensed in states? I mean,
it's certification.
Certification.
And it's certified by...
And you have to take a test? And
absolutely. And I'm the only board-certified past life regression therapist in the county, in Santa Barbara County.
Really? Wow.
So it's a
Should
labor of
keep you
love.
busy because there are a lot of nuts around here. So you must have a busy practice.
Well, we're very
doing
busy.
okay.
Exactly.
No, I mean, just carrying a human body is traumatic. I mean, until we get to the root of what it is to be a human being and really get that perspective. I mean, there's, we're fragile in that way. And it's just so easy to feel separate and, and be hurt and feel defeated when it's really not like that.
Right, right. And what we find is, but by going into the story, if you will, into the body, because the body remembers what has happened here.
Right, the body
So we
remembers.
go into the body and allow the body to take us there through its feelings, through its thoughts, through its voices that might come from the imagination, and just simply go with it. See where it takes you. And often it takes you right where you need to go. And I believe these sessions are led by the higher self, or that part of us that wants us to heal and is there to help and guide and support us.
And your job is just to facilitate it and be there as someone who knows the process and is open to that unfoldment.
And to hold the space, to make it very safe for that individual to explore the deepest reaches of themselves, to really go into, if you will, the soul, and
to let go.
Let go. To then
surrender to the process.
And move on then. Because you can come to closure with those stories.
Did you find it more difficult to do it in a television studio with lights and cameras and people buzzing around? And no? Because once you get into it, it's just you're there and you're there with the client. And the client hopefully is just there with you and let's go into it.
And I think it was very easy for Jo. It was a pleasure working with her because she, despite the cameras and the lights, she sensed and felt herself in those experiences, in those
and
stories.
she felt reasonably safe to be able to let go into that.
Right.
Not reasonably safe to actually watch it after. But
No, we'll see.
No, it's been a couple of weeks, but we'll see. No, she might need, as I said to you earlier, she might need another session to actually watch it. I'm so kidding. It's a joke. I'm playing. So, when you took all these classes, you knew that you wanted to pursue it in this way. I mean, you felt that right away that this whole amalgam of all the different, I mean, did you have a spiritual background with shamanism and Buddhism before, or did this all come through the regression therapy?
I had an interest in a variety of different approaches, religious approaches, as well as
what were you doing
therapeutic.
before? I mean,
working as a fundraiser for the National Trust for Historic Preservation.
In Washington?
In Washington.
And so you weren't doing any healing work in that particular way, not specifically per se?
That was about 15 years ago.
And it just, as soon as you went in the room, was like,
this is me. This is
I might
my
be
tribe.
doing fundraising, but this is where my passion is, like I said at the opening. And changed your life, right?
It has. And it's given me, what I particularly enjoy doing is helping people release the blocks that are preventing them from getting what they want.
It's so beautiful, isn't it?
And their inner wisdom knows what needs to happen. So we're just, as you mentioned, making way, helping them truly move to the side and allow it to take place.
And once it does, it reprograms the whole physical form and the emotions and all, and then they can proceed from there. Now, if it's a habitual thing, does it take a while to unhabitualize it? Would you say if you get to the root and clean the root out, that, you know what I mean? It's like if someone does things and ends up in jail, if they send them right back to the same place under the same conditions, then sooner or later his shoulder's going to be...
Right, right.
You know what I mean?
Well, we find that the unconscious mind knows where to take the client. And so it may be 1 or 2 or 3 lives around a particular issue, and it may take us 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions to really release it or clear it. But once it's cleared, it's cleared. And the other lifetimes that may have had that as part of the story aren't even important anymore. They've simply faded into the ether, if you will.
So we move on to the next level of experience of love.
Exactly. So it's intensive, but it's short-term.
Well, I know
therapy.
that. I mean, when we first met, and then a few people who we know are associated with the show, did the therapy, and they've had incredible results from what they were saying.
Exactly. So it's just helping them to truly get in touch with that healing part of them that is there waiting and hoping that it will be called upon.
And so, see, the thing I'm not clear about is, do people want to keep coming back to, keep getting deeper or higher, or no?
Don't need to.
Don't need to.
In fact, today I received a phone call from a former client who wanted to give a gift of this to his wife for her birthday coming up. We had 1 session before, and often 1 session will be enough. Not all the time, but for many issues, it can be resolved. With Joe, it was resolved in 1 session. But I am very careful to say it can take more than 1.
Right.
And we just simply trust the process and allow it to unfold. So,
is this particular regression therapy a widely... I mean, I had never heard of it before I met you. I mean, I'd heard of hypnosis and...
It's an approach that was, as I say, pioneered by Roger Wilger, whose book, Other Lives, Other Selves, is considered to be a classic in the field and is seen as one of the definitive works in the field of regression therapy. And his approach involves working with catharsis, so there can be emotional outbursts of when you go into the pain, let it out, express it, just simply allow it to take place, and any yelling or screaming or
so whatever. There are things like the old primal scream, and so in some of the sessions it gets pretty hectic and erratic.
But afterwards the client is so relieved and so happy with the results, because we have in that very process helped to release the tension and the trauma from the physical body, from the mental subtle body, from the emotional subtle body, as well as the spiritual subtle body, if appropriate. So that truly it is a transformation that is clearing the trauma from all aspects of the individual.
So in other words, people feel extraordinarily different and extraordinarily lighter.
Yes, and as you saw with Joe and the tear, she had a big smile on her face. It was more of a tear of joy than a tear of...
feel free.
Exactly. So that
a little freer, a little lighter.
And more empowered. If I can help a client truly get in touch with their own power and through this process let go of the past, terrific. I've achieved my goals. And not to develop a relationship where they depend upon me for this type of work. Oh, no way. My goal is to help...
To make them realize their own grace and their own power.
Through this process. And let it go and move on. And move on with your life as a result.
It's an amazing thing, because, one of the things that sometimes happens with therapists or gurus is that they like the attention, and they like people needing them and counting on them. And so the process, in my opinion, gets subverted. And instead of the process of a guru or a process of a therapist being empowering and showing the person their own glory and their own godliness,
Right.
they become a disciple or they become, which I guess is fine for a certain amount of time.
Right.
But at some point it has to be, you know, go fly.
On. And I find too that in comparing this with talk therapy mainly focuses on just simply the mental side, the ego, if you will. And that can be helpful, but here we're going not only talking with the mental tapes inside of us, but also the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual.
So do you at all, because I know you're trained this, ever do a hypnosis in that way? Or you didn't do it with Joe.
Right.
I know, I saw, that was the one I saw.
Mm-hmm.
But you do that sometimes?
I can if the client would like it, but with hypnosis, you're calming the client down. You're making them, you're disassociating them perhaps from the experience. With this approach, we're going right into a recent memory of when you were experiencing that physical pain or that emotional trauma.
So you would prefer they not do hypnosis if possible?
Right, it's not necessary.
It's not necessary.
Because,
and people would do it, say, because I can't do this other one without even knowing it? I mean, how does that work?
By simply going into a recent memory of whatever the issue might be. Let's say you are seeking to, if I have a female client and she is having boyfriend problems where she just wants to break off the relationship and it's been several weeks but she can't get him out of her mind. Go into that memory of what that feels like, that he's always in your mind. Just what is it? What are you thinking? What are you feeling emotionally? What are you feeling in your body? And just recreate it in your imagination and allow that, we then encourage that to take us back to the cause. She's already entranced by this time by just remembering what that is.
So why would anybody desire hypnosis? Or
if they can, but it's not. It's just a waste of time.
Not
necessary.
So you would generally not do it?
Right.
Unless you had gone through like a bunch of sessions and they couldn't. But has that ever happened where somebody just is too resistant for
Absolutely.
something? It does happen.
And so as a certified hypnotherapist, I can approach the problem from a different perspective and not use past life therapy, but instead use many of the techniques I've developed in neuro-linguistic programming, in alchemical hypnotherapy, in shamanism, and so on, that can be equally helpful depending upon where the person is. So it's having a variety of tools that can be based on the situation, hopefully helpful to the client in getting them where they need to go from their own perspective.
And everyone has, one man's floor is another man's ceiling, so it's just for them to take the next step, each person in each situation to take the next step. Mm-hmm. So you're just completely open. You have no idea where they need to go.
Well, we talk about it up front, and what are the goals? What would you like to achieve during this process?
And how often are the goals realistic, or the goals really what they want?
Fairly often, because during our initial intake interview, I ask specific questions about what does success look like for you? And I talk about my approach or approaches, because we could use past life work, we could use hypnotherapy or other techniques, and then we together determine how they would best like to proceed. Then go into that particular approach, and at the end of the session, evaluate to see, well, how was it? What did you think? What did you learn? What's different now than before?
And do, under both methods, on the hypnotherapy and under the regression therapy, are someone always conscious and remembering the whole process?
I tape the session and give the tape to the client, because often when there is emotion, you're not as conscious of what's going on. You are, but there's an awful lot going on in a session.
Right.
So by listening to the tape afterwards, it helps to enhance the healing, as well as assist in bringing up any additional areas they'd like to focus on or questions they might have. It's open covenants openly arrived at here to help them feel very safe and secure, and at the same time empowered.
So what is the feedback people give you from the tapes? I mean, does that really add a lot to the session when they get the chance to listen to it over and over again and really hear all the nuances of it?
They probably will listen to it once or maybe more than that. And the advantage there is that if we go into something particularly emotional or heavy, if you will, they could stop the tape and process it on their own as well, asking additional questions if they can, or saying something more to that person in the spirit world who hurt them. Because they're basically back in that situation once again, in that reverie state. So it is just another tool to use to do even more processing about the issue.
Now, it seems that during the process of it, that people come to certain understandings. And do you think that it opens the door, and that the understand, further up and further in, kind of, that those, once the door gets open, that, the understanding kind of grows from there?
The perceptions change, and that's our goal. As I said to Joe, let's go to that place of overview and see what impact this lifetime, this experience is now having on your life today. Lessons learned, lessons not yet learned. And at the same time, we can ask if there are key people involved, and there generally are, in the regression as part of the story. Look into the eyes of that Confederate soldier. Look deep into his soul there in the spirit world. Does he remind you of somebody in your present lifetime? Oh my God, it's my father. What are the parallels between what he did then and what your relationship is with your father now?
And does that happen often, that we carry similar, like, archetypes?
Absolutely, or the same. It could be the same soul energy. There was a study done several years ago by Helen Wambach of people who know or recognize others in their regressions from their present lifetime. And what she found was that 87% of those who participate in regressions see or sense or feel the presence of current people they know, boss, uncle, whatever it might be, in those regression stories.
So is it in order to learn that lesson, in order to overcome that defeat or disability or whatever, that thing that stopped us, that we almost in our consciousness bring that entity or that experience again into this life, to have it right around us in our face, kind of?
To help finish it.
To
help
be
complete
done
it.
with it.
Right, so that most likely it was that same person, again, if you believe in reincarnation, that we attracted into this lifetime to continue working on that issue, on that story. And what they did to us here, or what we did to them here in the story, is simply a reflection of what's actually happening in our present lifetime with that person.
And would, in your opinion, after seeing all these different stories over the last 15 years, that when basically all the stories are done, the experience is unconditional love?
That's what we're aiming for. I don't want to shoehorn it into the end of a regression until the client is ready, because it can't come from me.
Right.
It's got to come from the client, and it's got to be heartfelt. And if it's not heartfelt, let's process it some more, perhaps, if that's possible, to see if we can come to that point of forgiveness, of compassion, of letting go, so we can, or the client can, move on.
To move into like a greater experience of love, and just to keep that cycle going.
Right.
Of more and more. I mean, we talked about on the show last week that basically what humans want is to experience love and share love.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it looks like we want fame, it looks like we want fortune, it looks like we want the right mate or the right house or to live in the right area, or all the things that humans do, which are all fine.
Mm-hmm.
But really what we want is to give love and share love.
Exactly.
And well, to experience love and then just share it with whoever we come in contact with.
And this process helps to eliminate the blockages that are preventing the client from experiencing love or loving themselves, so they can truly move on and live their life with a greater awareness, a greater empowerment, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, at some point, I know you've seen the Bridging Heaven and Earth website. In the beginning we say, we are all made of love, God is love, and we are God. And at some point, all, love, God, and ourselves become one.
Yes.
And that's the experience that we really want. And that's in that we can walk through this world in light, in love, in beauty. And that's,
we bring forth in the regression, if appropriate to the client's belief systems, guides, or religious figures, or power animals, or other aspects of our unconscious or the between world state to help in that healing, so that it's not just simply the client or that those past life personalities, but also other helpers, ancestors come forth.
I think we're coming to the end. It was really great. So thank you, Peter.
Thank you,
it was really fantastic. So again, I just want to thank Peter. I want to thank you all again for coming. I want to thank you all for all the input we're getting from you. So good night. God bless you. We love you. just keep watching, keep the love coming. We've got some great shows coming up. Good night. God bless you.